So this is another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. I'm Jarad.
I'm Brandon.
And we got a lot of talking about name changing this week, as well as a football organization, which might have to change some aspects of itself. We're 1 week out from WrestleMania, but still obviously lots to talk about as the Heel to the Face podcast for another week starts right now.
Fans celebrate with me from Rome to Rochester.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. Make sure you are following us at Heel to the Face on Twitter. And thank you for everybody who follows us both on Twitter and subscribe to us on YouTube. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're listening to us on one of our podcast formats, we are coming to you from Syracuse 1 week removed from WrestleMania. You know, I know we're supposed to be looking forward, but WrestleMania is such a big event. You know, you still feel like you're in the aftermath of it. I think WWE thinks that as well, for the fact that they're still playing the clips and the highlights to lead off the Raws and the SmackDowns from WrestleMania. But I think this week what we will talk about to start things, and there's a few things to talk about as we head towards WrestleMania Backlash and other things, Double or Nothing, obviously, about a month away. But one thing I think Brandon definitely wants to hit on, and there's a few instances of this, is we're talking about, and we've seen this already a little bit, but this week it seemed like full force. We're talking about name changes. We're talking Raquel Gonzalez is now Raquel Rodriguez. We're talking the Imperium is now Ludwig. I forgot the last name that they gave him. We're talking Austin Theory. At least he told us, kind of gave us a little bit of reason why he's now just Theory. But I mean, this goes with Gunther. This goes with Butch. And I personally don't understand why at all. Do you know why the name changes are going on here?
WWE is known, especially in Austin Theory now, theories, in his case, WWE likes the one names. They don't really like the two names. Like, remember back in the day, Antonio Cesaro, and then they finally went to Cesaro. They've done that to so many superstars. I can't figure out why change, Walter to Gunther, and why change Marcel Bartel? What's his? Ludwig?
Ludwig, something else that somebody looked up that's also controversial. Like WWE didn't do their homework when it comes to historic names, I guess.
Of course they didn't. And then the one that really ticked me off was Raquel. Was it Raquel Rodriguez?
Raquel Gonzalez is now Raquel Rodriguez.
Yeah, like, what are we doing? Like, I texted you that when I saw it happen. I was like, why did they have to change that? Like, what was wrong with it?
And I understand WWE has always had different names for when people come in. That is not new, obviously. If they come from another company, if Cody Rhodes wasn't going to be Cody Rhodes coming in here, we'd understand that. I remember, what was it, Monty Brown from Impact when he came in as part of, ECW. He's Marcus Corvan back in the day. We understand there's different names because there's different copyrights and different trademarks. But I guess the question, which is, we don't understand, is they're going from a WWE product to a WWE product. So anybody out there saying, well, WWE wants to own the name, WWE wants to have the rights in the name, they should have these things sewn up when they sign for NXT, they signing for WWE. That is WWE.
100%.
And what I don't understand is the idea of NXT is to build them to be somebody that we recognize when they come to WWE. The reason why we're not pulling them from Ring of Honor or other indies is because they want essentially to make their own Ring of Honor, their own indie wrestling. So when they come to Raw, they get the Cody Rhodes treatment. Like, we all know who that is. They get the Bryan Danielson treatment. They get the CM Punk treatment. They get the treatment of, we already know who you are, like AJ Styles when he came out at the Royal Rumble. NXT's obviously good at doing that because they're the same brand. They're on the USA Network on cable television. They're a WWE brand. And whenever they sign anybody to NXT, they always take their picture with their WWE Performance Center t-shirt saying that they're signed to WWE as part of the new training class. So I don't understand why these things aren't getting sewn up and or why you're not, if you're bringing them up, you think they're popular. So you would think that they're popular with the names in which they've been given and which they built themselves up with.
The big one, obviously, is why would you change Walter, which is a very well-known, he was a well-known
And that's
competitor.
a one name that goes with your theory of having one name. I mean, Walter.
Yeah, that was perfect. That's perfect. And then Gunther, like, to me, it just shakes my head. I shake my head at some of the things, well, I should say a lot of the things WWE does. I mean, I know AEW is not perfect, but it's like AEW, like, they leave certain things alone.
Well,
which is nice.
I do like kind of what they're doing right now with Elias or Ezekiel. I mean, that name change is kind of part of the
Photoshop,
story.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I did see Elias and Ezekiel in the same room together, according to a photo.
Great Photoshop.
I think it's his brother.
It's a great Photoshop.
And this Monday night on Raw, we're gonna get down to the bottom of that's Kevin Owens' new storyline. He's moved on from Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania, and his new is getting down to figuring out who this Ezekiel really is. He thinks he's Elias. Other people, including Ciampa, who made his debut on Monday Night Raw, that's Ezekiel. But
wait, is it really Ciampa or is it Tommaso? They kept both names.
Well, I mean, wasn't going off of a WWE. It's Ciampa. In my eyes, I don't know what WWE, if they're calling him Tommaso Ciampa. From what I saw, it still seemed the same.
I think so.
But then again, here's the thing too with these name changes. To stay on that topic, this is a new thing. Adam Cole is Adam Cole. I mean, yeah, he had a cup of tea up in the main roster, but let's say like Aleister Black, let's say any of the other big NXT call-ups have always just been who they are. This is a recent thing. Yeah, Aleister Black didn't come up and have a different name when he got there. Enzo and Cass didn't have different names when they came up.
Riddle was Matt Riddle, and then when he got to WWE, like one day, it's like one night, it's like they just announced him as Riddle. It's like,
WWE does do that. I mean, we've seen that with Charlotte Flair a few times while she's been in WWE, that she's Charlotte Flair, then she's Charlotte, then she's Charlotte Flair again. Which to me, again, with the whole lineage thing, I don't understand why you touch that at all, because
you leave the Flair part in there. That's it.
Those are the best part. I don't understand that. Like, that's the reason why you have her. Charlotte is there 100%, and she's very talented, and she's earned her way there. But how she got her foot in the door, and how that they sold her on television when she probably never wrestled a minute in her life, was the fact that she was a Flair. Somebody brought this up pretty recently. I saw on our sports talk show, which is crazy to think. But LeBron James' son, he's like a junior in high school. I've never seen him play basketball. I have no idea of his talents. And as for his NBA ability, that's still years away. But people are already saying that he's going to be in the NBA, not because he's being given the LeBron James treatment as some upcoming star that we should watch on ESPN, just because his name is LeBron James.
Well, he is good.
Yeah, well, but he's not. I mean, his games aren't being televised on ESPN. And he's not the next big thing.
He's been on TV.
He has? Okay.
Yeah.
But we already know he's going to be in the NBA based off, even though that being years away, because of two things. One,
well, it's not that far away. If he's if he's a junior, then he's got 2 years.
But I mean, he hasn't played a minute of college. He hasn't played a senior year. I mean, there's just things where it's like you don't know, like unless you're given the LeBron James treatment, where you're like, this is forget the name.
Yeah, I mean,
forget the name. This guy.
Yeah, they can't
is
just put
the next Bryce Harper.
They can't.
They're not saying
they
that.
Can't say he's going to be as good as his dad, because we don't know. That's. I mean, LeBron James is one of the greatest players of all time. So, to kind of put that out there,
name
that's so good.
That is getting him out there. It's also the fact that, which is a crazy thing, is he could be absolute garbage at basketball, but LeBron James has already agreed to play one more year wherever his son goes.
Well, I know.
So essentially, someone's going to sign him just to get LeBron James.
Dwayne Wade's son was highly touted, and unfortunately, at this point, he's in the, what do they call it now, the G League?
Yes.
They're
in their finals right now.
And his last time I checked, which I don't frequently follow the G League, last time I checked, I mean, he wasn't getting a lot of runs, so that tells you all you need to know about maybe him at this point. Maybe he's not ready.
The idea is that, you have these names. That's why Charlotte Flair is there. That's why she's the headliner. That's, you have these names. Don't know why you don't utilize them. That's essentially the best part about them.
Yeah, to me, you can't just go back from Charlotte to Charlotte Flair with her name, and she's her dad is like the Babe Ruth of wrestling. Like he's one of the all-time greats. You make sure you emphasize, hey, that's my daughter, and that's my dad. That's how it should be. You don't change it up. You leave it.
Speaking of names, and speaking of people whom I don't know why WWE has never written better stories for this person, because I feel like they've been shafted their whole career. But Natalya showing up on NXT doing the Dolph Ziggler thing, attacking Cora Jade.
Isn't she the? I gotta stop you there real quick before we get into that. Natalya and Dolph Ziggler, they're both on the same level of consistently, maybe they're not the Charlotte Flairs or the Roman Reigns, but they are consistently a presence on WWE programming, and they're taking a similar path at this point. I have to say, as much as sometimes, Dolph Ziggler, he deserves to be in Roman Reigns' spot, and Natalya deserves to be in Charlotte's spot. What's wrong with what they're doing right now? They're making a lot of money.
And
I'm just saying.
I just feel like they get overlooked. They get overlooked, and they're trying to, and hopefully this will help them.
I don't think they get overlooked. I just think everybody, and that's the thing, not everybody can be a star, a mega star like a Roman Reigns an Undertaker, like an icon.
No, I get that.
You're gonna have. It's just like in any sport. You're gonna have guys that are the stars of the team. Then the rest of you are role players, and you're and like I'll give you an example in the NBA. For a long time, a guy named Lou Williams. He was never a starter. He was just sixth man, and he made a lot of money, and he had a good career. That's the same thing. But
things in WWE are built. They can build up good stories. That's what makes it what it is. That's it's not just about the athleticism.
It's just good stories.
I think a great story is using Natalya, building her up as a legitimate women's contender, and having her go one-on-one, whether it be SummerSlam or WrestleMania or a big pay-per-view, as Natalya Hart or Natalya Neidhart, however you want to do it, and have her go up against Charlotte Flair. But you got to build her up. You got to build her on the same level as Charlotte. You have to build her where she's not just
I would say
Andre the Giant or Women's Battle Royal contender,
as much as I touted Natalya, I mean, Charlotte Flair is essentially the Roman Reigns of the women's division. I think it's tough there's not too many female competitors that you can say you can put on the marquee next to Charlotte Flair, and it's not it's almost an even kind of deal. There's not many of those. Natalya, and she's got a great lineage. She's done a great job in her career, but she would be kind of the one, and then it'd be Charlotte 1, and then you'd have Natalya as kind of the 2. It wouldn't be 1 and 1A.
No, that's fine if she's number 2, because right now when's the last time you saw her in the main event of a pay-per-view challenging Charlotte, Becky, Ronda, any of those people? Never.
Would you complain if you were in her position though?
No, you wouldn't complain because you got steady employment in a big time company like WWE.
Wait. Not only steady employment, but steady big checks.
Yes, but I will say WWE is missing out, and it doesn't have to be WrestleMania, but they're missing out on. Forget her talent, but the storylines that they could give Natalya, the fact that she's been there for so long, the fact that she's been quote unquote overlooked, that whole storyline. I mean, that's what builds up the matches. Sure, the match may not be the greatest match. It may not be live up to Charlotte versus Ronda versus Becky, or one of these Sasha versus Becky, or any of these kind of matches that we've had in WWE in the past. But the story itself could definitely be something that could essentially main event or women's main event one of these big time pay-per-views, because she does have that name. She has that lineage. So I feel like the story alone, if they took her off being face for a minute, made her kind of like a heel, and built her up as not just Natalya, the one who comes out on main event before Raw hits off, but the Natalya who wants to challenge for the belt. I mean, do you think Natalya's better than Doudrop?
Yes.
I mean, Doudrop just essentially main evented the Royal Rumble. She wasn't even on the WrestleMania card. She wasn't anywhere near WrestleMania.
No offense to Doudrop, but Natalya is better. That's just my opinion.
So I'm not saying you need to make it WrestleMania, and who the hell knows? You can make her be gone by WrestleMania, but it'd be a good Royal Rumble or SummerSlam or something like that storyline.
I'll just say this. I mean, Natalya going to NXT is good for her. I think it's a good move. Just like it was for Dolph Ziggler, it gets a little more attention on him, even if even if for her it's a shorter run. Just like Dolph Ziggler, he had he's had the NXT belt for, how long now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he lost it back to Braun Breaker.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, how long was it, though?
I mean, it was a few months. It
wasn't that long, you
yeah.
know? And that's the thing. Natalya.
It was like a month. Yeah.
Natalya, same thing. You can run her for a month, and that's it. The only thing I didn't like about the whole Braun Breaker, Dolph Ziggler thing is it was, in a way, it was kind of a little bit of a hot potato. Like you're building Braun Breaker up to be like this animal, and then the first main roster superstar that comes down beats him.
Yeah,
that was the only thing. But
and then he wins it back on a Monday Night Raw that was not, wasn't advertised heading into it.
And that's how I knew, Walter Gunter. I knew how he was going up to the main show was he lost the match clean to Braun Breaker on NXT. So.
And then he shows up on SmackDown this past week.
Yeah.
As we're moving towards Backlash, a lot of rematches, WrestleMania Backlash. I feel like they're going out of their way to do rematches because Backlash obviously in the past had a reputation for having rematches and stuff, but I feel like now they're trying to sell that even more because it's called WrestleMania Backlash. They specifically are calling it WrestleMania Backlash, so I feel like they're specifically trying to essentially resell WrestleMania in a sense. They're trying to say this is WrestleMania with stipulations. This is Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. This time they know their opponents. This is Ronda and Charlotte with an I Quit stipulation.
Or it's Backlash with a rebrand.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's Backlash with a rebrand, but I feel like WWE before you had rematches just out of laziness, just out of, that's what you did. But now I feel like they're going out of their way to kind of have a lot of rematches.
Is anybody complaining about a rematch between Cody and Seth? I don't think anybody is.
I mean, that should be pretty good. I can't wait to see what Cody does, following Seth. And I hope this time around maybe with knowing the match ahead of time, it's a better match. I mean, not saying that WrestleMania wasn't.
That was a hell of a match.
But I'm just saying it'd be great for that to be like an equal footing match.
It was an equal footing match.
No. I know that Seth knows ahead of time. I'm just saying now that they're going in, I feel like they can build the match versus build the suspense of who it is.
Sure, I understand that. I mean, obviously Seth's gonna sell it like, oh, I had no idea he was showing up. Obviously every aspect of that match was already planned out.
So does it appear that Roman Reigns will be sitting out or at least sidelined a little bit at WrestleMania Backlash? It looks like his focus is now helping the Usos unify the tag belts with RK Bro. I feel like that's going to be on the horizon for Backlash.
Yeah.
So I feel like, and there isn't anybody who's come to step up. I mean, Shinsuke came out essentially to step up to Roman Reigns on SmackDown.
Shinsuke's probably the opponent at Backlash.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, why not? Why not put Shinsuke? I mean, we know Shin's not going to win the match, but I mean, putting Shinsuke in that spot, I think, is well deserved. I mean, he's kind of been
just feels like a backlash. That just feels like
it's like thrown together real quick.
Yeah, it just feels like a preliminary on his road to his next big opponent.
You know what I want to see? Speaking of the bloodline, I don't know if you caught on NXT this past week. So Cameron Grimes had a match with Brother Oos, their Solo Sikoa, and he, after the match, it was like, a little respect thing. And then it was like, Cameron Grimes was kind of like, the hell with your bloodline kind of thing. So I'm like, I like the fact that NXT is even getting a little bit of that bloodline going. So I'm like, my question to you is, do you think they should have that presence in NXT? Like, keep Solo Sikoa down there longer? Or do you think they should bring him up as a part of the
do you think down
bloodline?
there he should start like the bloodline versus in NXT, or do you think he should come up and join the official bloodline? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I mean, if they're going to do the bloodline down in NXT, that'd be kind of cool. If they have maybe some crossover, maybe the Usos come down NXT once or twice.
Kind of help out.
Yeah, I don't think Roman's going to come down. But
let me ask you this. Let me ask you on the other side then. Do you think Solo Sikoa is? Do you think he's ready for the main roster?
I mean,
I think he's as ready as he's going to be. I mean, his style is pretty good. I mean, it's kind of in your face kind of a style. He's not going to be doing, a Ricochet kind of match, but he does enough to, in my opinion, to warrant a call up. And I think with him being a call up, I think it would just make that bloodline even better.
I guess the issue is though, with everybody in the bloodline currently having championships, if he comes up, he won't have a championship. So it'll kind of throw off that we have all the gold.
So why not
call him up and put like the IC belt on him?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, that would be pretty cool. This reminds me,
and here's the thing: it would be unexpected because maybe you can do like what would you call it? Like not an open challenge, I guess. Do like an open challenge, and then Solo gets the call up with the help of the bloodline. He's officially a heel. He's officially part of the bloodline, and he's got the IC belt on night one. How cool would that be?
You know what they should do? They did this twice in WWE, once in 1995 and once at Backlash 2001, and this is what this kind of feels like. Backlash 2001 had the match for all the gold. You had the world champion, you had the IC champion, and then they took on the Brothers of Destruction over the tag belts. Winner gets all the gold. I think, Roman Reigns teaming up with the Usos against RK Bro and maybe like Shinsuke. And a 6-man tag at Backlash. Winning team gets all the gold. Obviously, if somebody gets pinfall on Roman, then they'll be the world champion. If somebody gets pinfall on the Usos, they'll be the unified tag champions. If the Usos get pinfall on, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Could work, yeah.
Roman gets pinfall on Shinsuke, they get all the gold. So yeah, and all the gold. We saw this in 2001 at Backlash. Where was it the 2-man power trip? It was Triple H and Stone Cold who were the tag champs and the IC and world champions.
Yep.
It was interesting. We haven't seen it now in 21 years. It harkened back to a throwback of that Backlash.
It'd be a cool.
And it feels like that's what they're trying to do now with all the gold. You know what I mean? Having the bloodline have all the gold.
I mean, let me ask you this then: if I'm going to say not even if I'm going to say when the Usos get both titles, is it time to make just one belt and then we just have one brand, not a split brand?
It's very difficult because of the fact of you got to look at what WWE's intentions. If they're going to have two separate brands, like meaning like you're the champion, but you just go back and forth, then no, it's kind of dumb to have one belt. But if you are going to essentially unify the brands and both, SmackDown and Raw have the same roster, then you unify the belts. It really depends on what WWE's long-term intentions are.
I mean, what would you do? I think unifying the belts is better. I think the point. I've
always liked having one world champion.
I've always liked the fact of having less belts. Like,
Yes.
why do you need to have 2 sets of tag team belts? Why do you need to have women's belts on both? On both.
Yeah, I mean the
brands?
women's one's the one that suffered the most because of the fact that their roster isn't obviously as thick.
It's getting better. It's getting better. Though.
It's not bad, but
It's
I feel
improving.
like we don't have 100 people at our disposal. Going for
it's
these
not.
belts.
Yeah, it's not like the men's division. I
mean,
get that.
we do got Sonya Deville now. She made her intentions clear that she'll be facing Bianca Belair. Seems like at Backlash.
Yeah, that's
for the women's belt.
That's a Backlash match right there. That's kind of a dud.
For us, who will be, I just left WrestleMania last week, and it seems like just the other day I was in Dallas, but for the Monday Night Raw after. But one Monday Night Raw I didn't attend, but boom, a week later, back to Monday Night Raw this upcoming week in Buffalo.
Yeah.
We'll most likely be seeing the women's tag team titles on the line, as Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan were supposed to face off against Sasha and Naomi this past week, but Rhea Ripley was in concussion protocol, so they postponed that match for 1 week. And also the IC belt, or the U.S. belt, I'm sorry, with Finn Balor versus the new one-named Theory will be on the line this upcoming week on Monday Night Raw. And it seems like probably the 24/7 belt will also be up for grabs. I don't know why they don't do more with that. I don't know why.
Yeah,
One thing WrestleMania, I feel, with 2 nights, it did it last year and it did it again this year, no backstage shenanigans. Past WrestleManias, you'd have like
You'd have something.
Dan, I'm talking like Farouk in the back doing, with the legends doing, some sort of skit, or like the hardcore belt running around. With the 24/7 belt, how do you not have that at WrestleMania? Like while we're waiting for the next match, how do you not have some sort of like celebrities? How do you not have Ezekiel Elliott or, the guy from Yellowstone or any of these kind of guest stars who show up to WrestleMania?
The guy from Yellowstone, nice.
I don't know that guy, but how do you not have that? How do you not?
You knew him well enough to say the guy from Yellowstone.
He was on the jumbo screen to see.
Did you actually see? He, who's a big fan of Yellowstone is Brock Lesnar.
Oh, that's I saw that. He was talking to him backstage before the match.
Yes.
Probably why he was there.
It is kind of Brock Lesnar to be a fan of Yellowstone, by the way.
But how do you not how is it 24/7? The whole idea of this belt is to be the hardcore belt, and how do you not utilize it more? How do I not?
I agree.
I mean, it's crazy to think that most WrestleManias have some crazy, like let's say when The Rock hosted WrestleMania, 99% of the stuff he did as a host was backstage segments. So like, how do you have a 8-hour WrestleMania and essentially no backstage segments? Not even any backstage interviews. What happened to that? There was no, The Rock just moments away from your championship match here.
Cutting a live promo or cutting a live interview, sure, but not something pre-taped.
Yeah, but I mean,
clearly that was like some things are clearly
that used
pre-taped.
to be one of my favorite things about a wrestling pay-per-view in general was, they'd cut to The Rock or Stone Cold or Triple H backstage, Michael Hayes with Triple H just minutes before your championship match, and he'd cut some sort of promo. The Rock, obviously, put his hand up in front of the microphone and do his finally The Rock, and tonight here in such and such city.
Yeah, insert city name.
None of that. They did none of that at WrestleMania. Yeah. There was no, we're with the Usos just minutes before their tag. And that seemed to be a staple of WWE in the past. I wonder why they got rid of it.
Well, they didn't get rid of it completely because
they do it on Raw.
Yeah,
still.
they do it on Raw because they'll have like Riddle and
how do you have 8 hours of
WrestleMania?
WrestleMania? 8 hours of WrestleMania, none of it.
I don't know. It's just a different presentation.
Yeah.
Like they want to have 5 minutes or almost like 10 minutes of just going, kind of summarizing where we were and where we are today, and this is why we're having this match tonight.
So speaking of The Rock, I don't know if you saw, but we didn't talk about it last week. The XFL has put out their logo, which will be in the 3rd incarnation of the XFL, their 3rd different logo. They've actually announced head coaches for the potential teams. I don't know if they've already announced that they're keeping the teams from the 2nd incarnation of the XFL or not, but they've announced head coaches. But one thing before they can get things started is the logo itself. And they're getting some pushback, a cease and desist from some women's athletes who essentially have this Be Together initiative that they do. Some of the women's soccer players, I'm not familiar. I think one's Alex Morgan.
Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe.
So, okay. So
and I want to say Sue Bird also, Megan Rapinoe.
So they're going up against The Rock here. So it looks like he might have to change his logo. He might have to get the X out. The Kona phrase from Vince McMahon back in the day. So that logo might not be sticking around. If you've seen the new XFL logo, it might just be a very temporary minute in time. So we'll see how long this logo lasts, or if The Rock's going to put up a fight for it. I don't see why you would put up a fight for this logo.
If he really wanted to, he could, because he has more money than the 3 ladies.
That is true.
I mean, if he really wants to. But The Rock is one of those people where he's not looking for bad press. So I think The Rock he'll figure out a way to make it. He'll come out smell like the champ that he is.
Here's a question that I'll pose to you right now, and I'll actually put it on our Twitter later tonight. The USFL starts this upcoming weekend. When the XFL kicks off next spring, will the USFL also be going on, or will the XFL be the only second football league?
I think they're both going to be there.
You think they're both going to be there? We haven't seen it yet because the AAF never made it to go against the XFL, and then the XFL never made it to go against the USFL.
No, I mean the USFL seems to be doing things. They do have a little bit of a lot of good things going for them, like former Cowboys coach and former Giants assistant coach Jason Garrett. He's going to be on the broadcast side of things. So, I mean, they're trying to put on a good broadcast.
Here's how I know that these secondary leagues are awful. I heard on ESPN today they were talking about a new rule in which is going to automatically detect first down with the ball is going to have a chip in it, so that there's going to be no more chains. Right? So I was listening to ESPN, and Mike Greenberg on ESPN, who's probably been there forever, he's a very well-versed sports guy, was saying
well-versed, okay.
was talking about this new rule and was saying about other new rules that happened in the football league that came upon last time, but he didn't even remember the name, even though he had admitted to having broadcasted some games on ESPN for the AAF and had admitted that ESPN had a partnership with the AAF when it was around, but was just referring to what was that league called? And they had a round table of trying to remember without Googling what the league was called. This was 2 years ago. This league existed. And they're like, wasn't it the AFL or the AAFL or the AFC or the AFF? Like, they didn't even know the name. Like, they one time said, was that the, like Mike Greenberg was even saying, was that the XFL that we were working on, or was that something different? I know it was the,
sometimes
the Dick Enberg
sometimes I feel like he plays dumb for the show.
But I mean, that shows you how important he's not forgetting the name of the NFL.
Sometimes I feel like Greeny can say some things or do some things just to get some more attention. So I'm not saying you're wrong that maybe it was fully the real deal. But part of me says it's Mike Greenberg. You never know with him.
So we're going to two quick things to close this week. Maybe we'll talk about this more next week. I'll start with talking about XPW. We obviously one of the only podcasts out there that gave it a lot of notoriety when it made its rebirth this past fall, because they made its rebirth right here in Central New York. Rob Black, who currently is a resident of Rochester, New York, decided that this is where he was going to rebrand and rebring back XPW following all those Dark Side of the Rings. And it was like ECW 2.0. It was the name, it was the highlight packages from the past, but it wasn't XPW at all. Brian Cage won the world championship in a match that wasn't really bloody. I think one match stopped because of blood. But this past Saturday night at 10 o'clock Eastern time, which is crazy to think on how long this event went, but 7 o'clock local time in California, XPW California King of the Deathmatch tournament. And 6.5 hours later, let's just say XPW this past week was exactly as previous as it was. XPW, Vic Grimes made an appearance. Pogo the Clown made an appearance. Jasmine St. Clair from ECW and XPW days back, she made an appearance. And it was a wild event. Now, what I'd like to talk more about is...
how was the crowd?
The crowd was bigger, I think, than the XPW show. Not in Rochester, not much bigger, but a little bit bigger. But it was just crazy to think how long this show was and how they even specifically were mentioning how they were handcuffed in New York from being the real XPW, which makes me wonder why that they would have picked that to be a rebirth if that's what you're going to do.
It there then?
If you like violent porn, essentially, that's violence porn, because that's what this was. This was just, blood for the sake of blood. I mean, we're talking being in the crowd. I actually sat in the upper deck at the XPW show with the thought in my head that if this was truly a traditional XPW show, it's nicer to be away from the action a little bit, because it could be a little dangerous. That was the case of this XPW show. Watching it, well, if you're close in the front row or something like that, some shards of glass or something could get near you or get close to you. You might want to be a little removed from the action. But we'll talk a little bit more about that maybe in the future, about the length of the show and the length of wrestling in general and where we have gone.
4 a.m. Eastern is the finish time?
From when Hulk Hogan used to make rare appearances in WWE on occasion to be somebody who wasn't overexposed, to now where wrestling is literally like they think that all wrestling fans only watch wrestling. But we'll finish out this week's show talking about the biggest pre-sale registration, they're saying, in WWE history. Over 59,000 people have already pre-saled or pre-registered to receive offers for tickets for their upcoming show in Cardiff, Wales on September the 3rd. We rumored about this. We rumored about the fact that they were going to go there, which is going to essentially make 4 stadium shows in a row if you got Money in the Bank in Las Vegas, SummerSlam in Nashville, this show in September, and then Saudi Arabia in October.
So my question for you is, Are you going?
We don't know yet. It's looking pretty grim, I would say, on attending this show. But
well, yeah, because you gotta cross the pond, which is it's not cheap. Last time I checked, and then you're gonna have to get tickets on a secondary market, which is gonna be expensive. That's an expensive trip.
Well, yes, and it's more or less the time that it takes. I mean, if this was, I feel like Nashville for SummerSlam is a more. I could even go there in a day. A flight, if all flights work out well, a flight there and flight back
Jared,
can
we
happen.
know how those go for you lately.
Yes,
so.
that can all happen within a day's time. But, London, you definitely need the time to get there and to get back. I mean, it's a full day of travel that you got to give up both ways.
Yes, you do.
But it's crazy to think that they're going to be running this many stadium shows. And I guess the question is WWE going to be able to put on a stadium caliber show 4 months in a row? Or are some of these shows just going to be, WrestleMania Backlash in a stadium?
I think you know what? I'm going to say yes. You know why? They got pressure from AEW. And they're not admitting the pressure, but I think the pressure of AEW.
Because, again, how many times can you run? The Royal Rumble is a built-in stadium show, and WrestleMania is a built-in stadium show. And the Elimination Chamber was essentially kind of a built-in stadium show because you're going to a Saudi audience.
I'll just say this, dude. I think this is WWE's way of saying, AEW, you want to be the talk of wrestling, do what we're about to do. And guess what? Tony Khan, knowing him, he's going to probably go for it at some point. But at this point, this is just WWE flexing its muscle and saying, "Hey, we're the big ticket in town."
I guess, like I said, are they going to be putting on a Money in the Bank or SummerSlam or this show that is different than just a traditional pay-per-view?
I think they're gonna make it a really one of the main 4 shows. That's just how I feel.
For Brandon, I'm Jared. This has been another edition of the Heel to Face podcast, and we will talk to you next week.